Everything you've been taught about reality is based on a framework designed to keep you grounded in the visible, the measurable, the logical. But what if the actual framework is far more expansive, interwoven with layers of mind, energy, and spiritual intelligence that exist far beyond physical perception? Modern quantum physics reveals that particles don't exist in fixed states until they are observed. That two entangled particles can affect each other instantaneously regardless of distance. And that uncertainty isn't just a feature of the microscopic world, it's baked into the very architecture of the universe. These discoveries are not philosophical speculation. They are repeatable empirical findings that challenge our understanding of consciousness, time, and space. Now, consider a lesser-known, but profoundly bold spiritual text known as the Urantia Book. Published anonymously in the mid-20th century, it claims to be a revelation authored not by humans, but by celestial intelligences. It offers an elaborate cosmology, detailed accounts of planetary history, and a deeply intricate view of consciousness and spiritual progression. Its descriptions of mind, divine fragments, and multidimensional universes seem almost tailored to complement the quantum worldview now emerging in science. This isn't about trying to validate one idea using another. It's about exploring a potential synthesis, where the most forward-thinking aspects of theoretical physics meet a spiritual narrative that speaks in terms of vibrational realities, nonlinear time, and a universe teeming with intention. In this series, we will examine the intersection of quantum consciousness and the Urantia teachings, not as parallel beliefs, but as two perspectives that may actually describe the same underlying reality from different vantage points. Here's what you can expect. We'll begin by exploring the nature of mind and its function in both systems. Then, we'll investigate the origins and claims of the Urantia Book, before breaking into key concepts such as the structure of the universe, the continuity of consciousness, the mechanics of thought, and the hidden dynamics of spiritual evolution. Throughout, we'll connect these ideas back to quantum theory, observer effect, entanglement, non-locality, probability fields, and ask how they might interact with the Urantia perspective of a purposeful, personality-driven cosmos. This conversation isn't about mysticism dressed as science, nor is it a dry analysis of obscure scripture. It's a guided inquiry into the nature of what we call real, an invitation to question every assumption about mind, matter, and meaning. Because if reality is not what it seems, if thoughts influence particles, if mind is more than just an emergent property of neurons, then understanding the true nature of consciousness becomes the most important pursuit of our time. And maybe, just maybe, texts like the Urantia Book were trying to tell us this long before our instruments could measure it. Let's begin. Consciousness is typically described as an emergent property, a byproduct of biological complexity, a network of neurons firing in sequence, generating awareness through sheer computational weight. But that explanation breaks down fast under quantum scrutiny. Consider this. In quantum physics, the act of observation determines the outcome of a particle's behavior. This isn't metaphor. This is the basis of the double-slit experiment, where photons behave either as particles or waves depending on whether they're observed. Observation itself, not the detector but the conscious interaction with the system, seems to collapse the infinite into the specific. This doesn't prove that consciousness creates reality, but it strongly implies that consciousness participates in it at the most fundamental level. And that's a problem for conventional neuroscience, which insists that mind is confined to the skull. Quantum consciousness challenges that. It suggests that the mind is not of the brain, but that the brain acts more like a receiver, a localized interface for a non-local awareness field. In other words, the brain tunes into consciousness rather than producing it. This perspective aligns shockingly well with the teachings found in the Urantia Book. According to the Urantia Book, mind is a cosmic organizing principle, bestowed by higher orders of spiritual beings and tailored for each level of creature existence. The book describes a tiered structure of consciousness that begins with basic mechanical mind and ascends through morontia mind, a transitional state between material and spiritual, ultimately connecting with divine mind. For human beings, the most profound feature is the presence of a thought adjuster, a direct fragment of God indwelling the human mind, guiding thought, intention, and soul growth. Let that settle in. Not only is mind not limited to the brain, it's also not fully human. According to this model, every person hosts a non-material presence that knows them more deeply than they know themselves, constantly attempting to synchronize personal will with divine purpose. Now return to quantum theory. The idea of entanglement, two particles becoming so intrinsically linked that they respond to each other instantly regardless of distance, begins to sound less mechanical and more relational. The universe, it seems, is built on interconnectedness, not isolation. So how does the Urantia concept of the thought adjuster fit into this? One possibility is that this indwelling presence acts as a bridge between the finite and the infinite, mediating between personal consciousness and a universal field of intelligence. In quantum terms, the thought adjuster may be described as a non-localized observer embedded within your individual field, constantly influencing probability, guiding interpretation, and whispering insight from beyond physical parameters. This isn't just poetic abstraction. It has practical implications. If your mind is part of a broader network of intention, then every thought has resonance. Every choice modifies your trajectory not only biologically, but spiritually and dimensionally. Your capacity to focus, to intend, to listen, and to align becomes your method of communication with the quantum field, and, in Urantia terms, with divine guidance. There's another important overlap. Both quantum theory and the Urantia book emphasize uncertainty, not as a flaw but as a feature. In quantum mechanics, uncertainty is baked into the system. You cannot simultaneously know the exact position and velocity of a particle. The more you measure one, the less you know of the other. In Urantia, uncertainty exists because of free will. The divine doesn't pre-program your path. It allows you to grow through authentic, unconstrained choice. Free will introduces a level of unpredictability that even God does not override. That's where destiny is shaped, not by fate, but by intention. So now ask yourself this: if the brain is merely an interface, if consciousness is a field, if you are in constant dialogue with a non-physical presence that exists outside time, then what exactly is you? The implications are enormous. You are not a machine. You are not your brain. You are not a collection of memories and preferences floating in a meat suit. You are a convergence point between quantum potential and divine purpose. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner we stop living as biological survivors and start acting as conscious creators. The Urantia book does not introduce itself quietly. It opens with the claim that it has been written by a coordinated group of superhuman personalities, celestial beings who operate at various levels of the universe, authorized to transmit advanced truths to Earth. This isn't casual symbolism or literary flair. The authorship claim is explicit and serious. According to the text, these papers were authorized by higher spiritual administrators to help correct planetary confusion, unify science, philosophy, and religion, and to prepare humanity for the next phase of consciousness evolution. That statement alone triggers skepticism, and rightly so. In an age shaped by scientific empiricism, any assertion of non-human authorship draws immediate scrutiny. But before dismissing the text, it's worth asking, could there be content within its pages that genuinely anticipates or aligns with quantum discoveries made decades later? The book is over 2,000 pages long, comprising 4 main divisions. The first describes the central universe and the nature of God. The second explains the structure and administration of the local universe. The third covers our planetary history, including an alternative narrative of evolution and spiritual development. The fourth presents an extended life and teachings of Jesus, entirely distinct from any canonical gospel. At a glance, it appears to be a hybrid of cosmic theology, deep metaphysical speculation, and philosophical synthesis. But a deeper reading reveals something else, a systematic metaphysical framework that bears eerie resemblance to the principles now surfacing in quantum thought. Let's explore why. Throughout the Urantia book, reality is described as multidimensional. It differentiates between physical energy, mind energy, and spiritual energy. Each has its own laws and dynamics, but all operate within a unified universal architecture overseen by intelligent administrators. This description mirrors the layered models emerging in quantum cosmology, where fields, probabilities, and information interact to shape matter and experience. But the real intrigue lies in how the book treats consciousness. According to its authors, mind is not a local accident of chemistry, but a cosmically distributed system. Thought originates from higher influences as much as it arises from within. And within every human being resides a personal thought adjuster, what the book calls a fragment of the Universal Father. This adjuster is not symbolic. It is a literal presence, pre-personal, pre-time, and deeply participatory. That might sound esoteric until one considers the implications of the observer effect in quantum physics. In simple terms, particles behave differently when observed. This implies that conscious interaction influences the physical outcome. Now, if observation itself is a creative act, and if every human houses a divine observer within their consciousness, suddenly the metaphysics of the Urantia Book begins to map onto quantum theory in unexpected ways. Another standout feature is its treatment of space and time. The Urantia Book asserts that space is not empty, and time is not absolute. It describes space as curved, elastic, and filled with energies beyond human detection. Time, it claims, is a condition of creature existence, used to organize experience but not a property of ultimate reality. Again, modern physics agrees. Einstein's theory of relativity already dismantled the notion of linear, universal time. Quantum models continue this trend by proposing multiple timeframes, retrocausality, and even timeless states. But what separates the Urantia Book from typical metaphysical literature is its scope. The text outlines a detailed cosmic hierarchy, layers upon layers of inhabited realms, each with distinct functions, beings, and spiritual significance. This isn't mythology. It reads more like a user manual for a multidimensional operating system. And here's the radical part. According to its teachings, Earth, referred to as Urantia, is just one of millions of evolving worlds. We are not a final product. We are a beginning, a world still under construction, spiritually speaking. And that construction includes a deliberate plan to reveal truth incrementally, as human capacity allows. Which raises a pressing question. Why now? Why are people increasingly seeking alternative models of consciousness? Why are terms like vibrational reality, non-duality, quantum healing, and multidimensional awareness entering the mainstream? Perhaps the frequency of human thought is shifting toward levels that make these ideas more accessible. Perhaps consciousness itself evolves not only within individuals but across civilizations. The Urantia Book supports that. It suggests that planetary evolution is guided by spiritual administrators who release new revelations when the time is right. Never before the minds of humanity can accommodate them without distortion. That may sound fantastical, but consider this: if consciousness is indeed primary, if thought shapes matter, and if reality is organized by intelligent fields rather than mechanical laws alone, then it stands to reason that higher intelligences might participate in humanity's awakening. Which leads to another key point. The Urantia Book never asks for belief. It offers no dogma. Its tone is factual, descriptive, and vast in scope. It invites investigation, not worship. And that is its strangest quality of all. For a book claiming celestial origin, it's shockingly devoid of mystical language. Its authors assert that they are not deities, but administrators. Their job is clarity, not devotion. This approach aligns well with the spirit of scientific exploration. Science, at its best, is about observation without assumption. It seeks elegant explanations, not convenient myths. The Urantia Book presents itself not as scripture, but as a revelation intended to harmonize our fragmented understanding of God, the cosmos, and the self. And this harmonization may be the key to something greater. As quantum physics begins to articulate a universe of probabilities, observers, and conscious fields. And as spiritual traditions point to a unified intelligence expressing itself through human experience. The Urantia Book stands at a peculiar intersection, not as proof, not as answer, but as a bridge, linking high science with high spirituality through a shared language of intelligent design and conscious evolution. So the question is not whether this book is real in the conventional sense. The question is whether it holds keys to a broader understanding of what consciousness is, where it comes from, and why it matters. That's where we go next. Everywhere we look, the physical world presents itself as solid, fixed, and external. The ground beneath your feet, the sky overhead, the pulse in your chest, all seem unmistakably real. But peel back the surface, and the illusion starts to unravel. At the quantum level, the world behaves less like a collection of objects and more like a set of probabilities. Fluid, uncertain, and defined only in relation to observation. Quantum field theory, the most accurate scientific framework for understanding subatomic behavior, states that all particles are excitations of invisible fields that stretch across space and time. These fields don't simply exist in one place or another. They pulse with possibility. A photon or an electron is not a thing until it is measured. Until then, it exists only as a wave function, a mathematical expression of potential outcomes. What defines which possibility becomes actual? Not mass, not velocity, observation. The act of conscious measurement collapses the wave function into a specific result. The observer is not a passive bystander. The observer is a co-creator. This principle doesn't just describe the tiniest fragments of the universe. It applies everywhere, which means the entire cosmos might be structured more like a vast, dynamic thought, interacting, adapting, and revealing itself in response to conscious engagement. The Urantia Book proposes a remarkably compatible idea. It claims that the universe was not created by accident or necessity, but by intentional will. Not the will of an impersonal force, but of a personality, the Universal Father, who brought reality into being through the creative cooperation of divine sons, spiritual administrators, and energy manipulators. The universe, in this account, is not merely a system. It is a narrative, a drama of experience, meaning, and relationship. From this view, space is not just empty volume. It's a living framework within which realities unfold. The Urantia Book teaches that space is organized by spiritual gravity, a force that not only pulls objects but also draws consciousness toward divine center. Time, similarly, is not an abstract continuum. It is the scaffolding of creature experience, created to allow finite beings to perceive change, learn, and evolve. Now compare that with how time is handled in physics. In Einstein's relativity, time is inseparably linked to space, forming a four-dimensional continuum where time passes at different rates depending on gravity and motion. It is not universal. It bends. It stretches. It slows down or speeds up depending on the observer's position in space. And in quantum experiments, time can behave in even stranger ways. In some interpretations, effects can precede causes. In others, particles separated by vast distances influence each other as if distance and time were irrelevant. These findings suggest that time is not fundamental. It is emergent, a byproduct of deeper relationships. The Urantia Book concurs. It describes eternity as the underlying state of reality, with time emerging only within localized systems to facilitate growth. As beings evolve, their perception of time becomes increasingly flexible, eventually transcending linearity altogether. This brings us to a deeper question. If space and time are not primary, what is? Both quantum physics and the Urantia Book answer the same way: consciousness. In the scientific realm, this is controversial. Mainstream physics still resists assigning any fundamental role to consciousness, even as its equations scream otherwise. But in emerging fields like quantum cognition and consciousness studies, researchers are beginning to ask, could awareness be more than just a result of physical systems? Could it be the substrate itself? The Urantia Book is bold on this point. It states that consciousness is not only real, it is the very mechanism through which the finite becomes aware of the infinite. It is a bridge between creature and creator, between uncertainty and meaning. And it doesn't stop there. It says that mind itself is a ministry, administered across the universe by the infinite spirit, functioning as a universal medium through which energy and spirit interact. In other words, reality isn't just a thought in motion. It's a thought being coordinated, guided, and expanded by intelligent presence at every level. Quantum theory introduces the idea of decoherence, the moment when a quantum system interacts with its environment and adopts a specific state. Urantia teachings suggest that similar transitions happen at the level of soul. Each choice, Each insight, each act of love or intention solidifies new states of being. Consciousness isn't a spectator. It participates in its own evolution. This interplay between potential and realization, between wave and particle, between soul and experience, is where the two systems overlap most profoundly. And it raises another idea. If the universe is built on layered fields of potential, then perhaps higher dimensions are not out there in space but inward through levels of consciousness. The Urantia Book describes multiple levels of existence: physical, morontial, and spiritual. Each level is more refined, less bound by material constraints, and more expressive of personality and intention. These aren't metaphors. They are described as actual states of being with their own physics, their own energies, and their own forms of mind. Physics, too, has been edging toward this. String theory suggests the existence of hidden dimensions compacted beyond detection. M-theory posits 11 dimensions. And quantum cosmology often assumes the existence of a multiverse, a spectrum of realities coexisting simultaneously. From the Urantia viewpoint, these aren't theoretical. They are lived. A soul progresses through these layers, acquiring knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual stature until it achieves fusion with its thought adjuster and ultimately stands in the presence of the Universal Father. So if you're asking whether the universe is a thought in motion, the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because at its core, reality responds to mind, intention, and observation. Because space and time behave like contextual settings within a greater narrative. Because particles are not fixed, but probabilistic, awaiting direction from consciousness. And no, because it's not just any thought. It's not random. It's not mindless. It is the expression of a living, intelligent source, a divine personality who projects meaning through form, love through law, and creativity through pattern. That is the convergence point between science and spirituality. The universe doesn't behave like a machine. It behaves like an idea, structured, purposeful, interactive. And if you are conscious, then you are not separate from that idea. You are part of the thought. You are part of the motion. Consciousness is often portrayed as a function of the brain alone, a mental phenomenon confined to neurons, networks, and electrical impulses. But when you consider the astonishing precision of biological life, the way your heart beats in perfect rhythm, your immune system targets threats with microscopic accuracy, your cells divide with engineered intent, it raises a deeper question. Who or what is coordinating all this? And how do cells, which we consider to be non-conscious, execute complex processes as if they're participating in something far greater than themselves? Quantum biology is beginning to offer clues. This emerging field explores how quantum effects, like superposition, tunneling, and entanglement, might be involved in biological systems. In traditional biology, these ideas were once thought irrelevant. The quantum world, it was believed, was too small and fragile to influence life at the macro scale. But that assumption is crumbling. Research shows that quantum processes are involved in photosynthesis, where plants absorb sunlight with nearly 100% efficiency by transferring energy through multiple pathways at once. Quantum coherence has also been proposed in avian navigation, as birds appear to use entangled particles in their eyes to detect Earth's magnetic field. And in the human body, there are growing indications that quantum effects may play a role in smell, DNA mutation, and even neural function. All of this points to a hidden architecture within biology, one that cannot be explained purely through mechanical chemistry. This brings us to the Urantia Book. In its account of human life, the body is not merely a vehicle, but a carefully crafted system designed to house something much more profound: personality, mind, and spirit. According to the text, biological life is only the outer shell. It is engineered with purpose by spiritual agencies, and it serves as the groundwork for a greater journey of soul development. The book makes a bold claim that every human being is indwelt by a fragment of divinity, a thought adjuster, which functions not merely as a spiritual compass, but as an actual co-participant in consciousness. While this thought adjuster influences decision-making and soul progression, its presence is not confined to thought alone. It is integrated into the life system of the individual. It functions subtly, perhaps even quantumly, embedded within the layers of human awareness that science is only beginning to recognize. If cells operate with a level of organization that seems intelligent. If biological processes are optimized through quantum strategies. Then the question shifts from whether cells know they're alive to whether they're participating in a broader consciousness. The Urantia Book doesn't describe cells as sentient, but it does affirm that life is governed by energy systems that exist beyond the physical. It introduces the concept of the life carriers, beings tasked with seeding and developing life forms on evolutionary worlds. These entities do not merely drop genetic material and leave. They remain involved until the life system becomes stable and self-sustaining. Their knowledge is not mechanical. It is energetic, harmonizing cosmic principles with planetary conditions. This perspective redefines what we mean by life. It suggests that life is not simply the product of chemistry, but the result of a guided process in which quantum intelligence plays a critical role. And it gives context to why consciousness seems embedded in the structure of life itself. In both quantum biology and Urantia cosmology, intelligence is not added to life at the end of a long evolutionary chain. It is foundational. Intelligence doesn't emerge from life. Life emerges from intelligence. Even more intriguing is the idea of coherence. In quantum systems, coherence refers to the alignment of phases between wave functions. When particles are coherent, they act in unison, as if part of a single field. In biology, coherence would mean that the body is not just a group of parts, but a resonant whole, a symphony of function orchestrated through a field of information. The Urantia Book supports this notion in spiritual terms. It teaches that the human being is composed of body, mind, and spirit, interacting through a form of harmonized consciousness. Mind serves as the mediator between material and spiritual energies, and when aligned with the thought adjuster, coherence is achieved at the soul level. The person begins to live in tune with divine intention. This is not poetic mysticism. It's a model of functional consciousness with real-world implications. When a person experiences clarity, peace, or heightened awareness, they are likely entering a state of internal coherence. Their thoughts, emotions, biology, and deeper self become aligned, not through random chance, but through attunement to a higher organizing intelligence. The question then becomes, how does this coherence influence biology? Studies in bioenergetics suggest that intention can affect molecular processes. Heart rate variability research has shown that emotions influence physiological health. Meditation, visualization, and breathwork are now being studied for their impact on genetic expression and immune regulation. In other words, the mind influences the body in measurable ways. And if the mind is, in part, influenced by a divine fragment, then the entire system becomes a feedback loop between spirit and matter. Cells may not possess awareness in the traditional sense, but they respond to fields. They align to signals. They function within a matrix of intelligent order that is remarkably consistent with both quantum laws and spiritual design. So when you ask if your cells know you're alive, you're touching the edge of a deeper reality. They may not know in the way you know, but they resonate. They respond. They act as if they're receiving instructions from a deeper source, whether we call it the quantum field, the morphogenetic template, or the indwelling adjuster. That resonance points to a universal principle. All parts of reality, from the smallest atom to the largest star system, operate within patterns of intelligent connectivity. Nothing exists in isolation, not even a cell, and you are the convergence of it all. A biological system wired for awareness, a conscious mind capable of intention, a spiritual entity designed for growth. When you experience joy, clarity, or alignment, your cells respond, not because they think, because they remember the original pattern, and that pattern was never random. It was and still is alive. The experience of life feels like a beginning, middle, and end. A linear journey with a known starting point, birth, and an inevitable conclusion, death. Everything else is memory, choice, and consequence. Or so we're told. But there are questions that refuse to stay buried. Where were you before you arrived here? And where do you go when the body ceases to function? Does consciousness flicker out like a candle in the wind? Or does it transfer, continuing in forms we do not yet fully understand. Quantum physics, once solely the domain of atoms and equations, now points toward possibilities that challenge traditional ideas about death and continuity. In the quantum world, energy does not disappear. Information, it is argued, cannot be destroyed. States shift, positions change, but nothing is lost, only transformed. This view leads some researchers to a radical implication. Consciousness itself may not end with the body. If it is part of a field, or even the field itself, then it is not bound by biological death. It is redistributed, restructured, and perhaps reawakened in ways beyond physical perception. The Urantia Book expands that idea into a complete cosmology of soul survival and postmortal progression. It declares that human life is not a single, isolated event. It is the first phase of a long, ascending journey that begins in material form but continues in higher dimensions of existence. After physical death, according to the text, those who have chosen truth, beauty, and goodness, even imperfectly, are awakened into a new state of being on what it calls the morontia worlds. These are not ghostly realms or dreamlike heavens. They are actual domains, real environments with real structures, designed for transitional growth between the physical and the spiritual. In these worlds, you retain identity, memory, and personality, but you gain new capacities, perception of higher energies, expanded awareness, and contact with advanced beings. The implications are extraordinary. Death in this model is not an end but a threshold, a passage from one classroom to the next. This is echoed, albeit abstractly, in quantum consciousness theories. Some physicists and theorists propose that the brain acts as a receiver of consciousness, not its origin. When the body dies, the signal doesn't vanish. It simply detaches from the receiver. This model allows for the continuation of awareness without needing a brain to sustain it, much like a radio signal continues even if the device is turned off. In this scenario, consciousness may return to the quantum field, merge with a higher informational plane, or transition into another structure capable of sustaining experience. The Urantia Book provides a structure for that next stage. It describes how personality is preserved, how the soul, defined as the evolving self that results from the integration of mind and spiritual values, is safeguarded and transported to the morontia spheres. There, under the guidance of celestial teachers and thought adjusters, it continues to grow, learn, and align more perfectly with divine will. This isn't reincarnation. You do not return to Earth in another body. You ascend. And with each stage of ascent, you become more attuned to spiritual reality, more expressive of divine character, and more consciously united with your eternal guide. This thought adjuster, the indwelling fragment of God, plays a crucial role after death. According to the Urantia text, it safeguards your identity, protects your spiritual progress, and acts as your eternal custodian until resurrection. At the appointed time, your personality is reassembled, not as a copy, not as a clone, but as you, with full continuity of memory, identity, and the unmistakable sense of self. You awaken not in some floating dream, but in an environment suited to the next phase of development. Now consider this in light of parallel realities. Quantum mechanics introduces the many worlds interpretation, which suggests that every quantum event branches the universe into new outcomes. In this view, all possibilities exist simultaneously in different layers of reality. You may only experience one, but others unfold elsewhere. The Urantia Book doesn't describe this exact mechanism, but it does portray a universe layered with domains of increasing vibrational frequency, each more responsive to mind and intention. These layers are not fictional. They are structured and maintained by intelligent beings. And each step upward brings you closer to the divine center, from physical worlds to morontia worlds, and eventually to the spiritual spheres of eternity. So where do you go when you die? You move forward. If you have aligned your soul with values of truth, if you have expressed sincere desire for goodness, even amidst failure, you continue. You awaken in a form no longer material but not yet spirit. You begin again, this time with full awareness that life is eternal, that meaning is real, and that growth is the core law of the universe. Quantum continuity suggests that identity, once formed, may be non-local. that your awareness might not be a product of molecules but of informational fields. And if those fields remain intact, then so too might you. The Urantia Book calls this the path of ascension. It describes 1 million inhabited worlds in the local universe alone, all functioning as platforms for soul development. From world to world, stage to stage, you progress not as a reward, but as a natural extension of what you are. A growing, evolving, personality-centered consciousness born from God and destined to return to that source by free will. This completely reconfigures how we view death. It transforms fear into responsibility. Death is no longer a threat, but a continuation. What matters is not how long you live, but what you choose while you're here. Do you align with higher values? Do you choose love when fear is easier? Do you cultivate your inner life as something more than reaction and survival? Because if the soul is the sum of your decisions, your aspirations, and your capacity to reflect divine qualities, then death cannot end you. It only unveils more of you, and the more aligned you are now, the smoother that unveiling becomes. Quantum science suggests we may already be participating in multiple layers of reality. The Urantia Book confirms it. You are more than what your senses report. You are more than your history. You are more than the flicker between birth and death. You are part of a continuum, personal, intentional, and eternal. When this life concludes, the journey does not. You are not lost. You are not erased. You are awakened. Life feels like a chain of events, decisions, consequences, paths taken, and others left behind. But is that how reality actually operates? Or is that merely how it appears to operate from our limited point of view? In quantum physics, there's a theory that radically shifts our understanding of decision-making, causality, and the structure of reality itself. It's called the many worlds interpretation, and it doesn't suggest that you could have lived a different life if you made different choices. It suggests that you already are, in another timeline, living that other life. According to this interpretation, every quantum event, no matter how small, splits the universe into multiple branches. In each branch, one possible outcome becomes real. Taken seriously, this means that every decision you make spawns a multitude of alternate versions of you, each exploring a different path. One version of you moved to another city. One chose a different career. One never met the person who changed your life. All those versions exist right now in parallel layers of reality. This idea stretches the boundaries of what we consider possible, but it also harmonizes powerfully with teachings from the Urantia Book, though from a very different angle. The Urantia text doesn't describe timelines branching like quantum trees. Instead, it presents a layered universe, an ascending series of realities through which the soul progresses. Each reality is not just spatially separate, but vibrationally distinct. As you grow in wisdom, spiritual alignment, and inner clarity, you advance through these levels. You do not split, but you unfold. Your identity expands, integrates, and ultimately fuses with the divine presence that dwells within you. So how do these two frameworks connect? They both point to multiplicity. In quantum theory, multiplicity arises through parallel universes. In the Urantia model, it comes through progressive transformation. One is simultaneous, the other sequential, but both suggest that reality is not a single static thread. It's a field of overlapping possibilities, and your consciousness determines which reality you experience. This leads to a provocative implication. Your reality may be more malleable than you think. You may not be stuck in one version of life. You may be selecting moment by moment what version you align with through intention, thought, and emotion. This idea is gaining traction in quantum-informed self-help and metaphysical circles. People speak of shifting timelines, collapsing old realities, or choosing higher versions of themselves. While mainstream science does not endorse these practices, the observer effect in quantum mechanics does confirm that observation changes reality. And the Urantia Book affirms that free will, when exercised sincerely, has the power to realign the soul with higher spiritual realities. You're not locked into a timeline. You're participating in a dynamic, living interface between your current state and all that is possible for you. This is where visualization enters the conversation. In both quantum philosophy and spiritual teachings, Visualization is more than fantasy. It is an act of intentional alignment. When you imagine a different reality with emotional clarity and sustained focus, you may be resonating with alternate versions of yourself, pulling them into awareness and influencing which branch of experience your consciousness follows. The Urantia Book teaches that faith is the activating force of spiritual transformation. Not blind belief, but active trust in the unseen. Faith isn't passive. It's directional. It steers your intentions. It invites divine cooperation. It moves you toward higher layers of reality, not by manipulating matter, but by refining consciousness. In quantum terms, you're not jumping from one universe to another like stepping between subway cars. You're adjusting your frequency of observation. You're tuning your awareness to the version of reality that matches your inner state. Now think about this: if multiple versions of you are playing out in multiple branches, and if consciousness is non-local, then the self you experience may already be entangled with those other versions. This entanglement doesn't mean you're aware of them, but it suggests that you are not singular in the way you think. The Urantia Book speaks about personality as unique and unrepeatable. No two beings have the same personality, but it also says that personality is unchanging in identity, even as it evolves. So while your personality remains uniquely yours, your soul accumulates experience across stages of existence, almost like distinct versions of you refining into one master thread of identity. This sounds abstract, but the practical point is powerful. If you are indeed shifting between outcomes with every meaningful choice, if reality is reflecting your consciousness back to you with precision, then every thought, every belief, every image you hold in your heart matters. The concept of co-creation becomes central. You're not just responding to life, you're shaping it through your energy, your attention, your expectation. This is why both quantum philosophy and the Urantia teachings emphasize intentional living. If you move through life unconsciously, stuck in repetitive patterns, toxic loops, or reactive emotions, you reinforce lower frequency versions of yourself. But if you wake up, cultivate vision, align with love, and act with integrity, you begin to inhabit a more refined expression of who you are. That isn't metaphor, it's mechanics. Your state of being is a broadcast. Reality responds accordingly. So, are you living in multiple timelines? In a certain sense, yes. There are endless versions of your life already in motion, each based on a different configuration of choices, beliefs, and intentions. But you experience only the one you are most aligned with right now. And that's the power you hold. You don't have to change your entire world in one moment. You only need to adjust your inner stance. A small shift in belief, a clearer picture of your highest self, a decision to forgive, a moment of clarity. These become the pivots that move you from one stream of potential to another. The Urantia Book teaches that the universe is not static. It's alive, intelligent, and participatory. Quantum theory, despite its technical language, reveals the same thing. You are not trapped. You are choosing, right now. So the question isn't whether you're living in multiple timelines. The question is, which version of yourself are you choosing to become today? You've heard the phrase countless times. Your thoughts shape your reality. It's repeated in self-help books, motivational speeches, and spiritual teachings across the world. But is this just a comforting slogan? Or is there something more substantial beneath it? Something measurable, structured, and real? Quantum physics has already shown us that observation plays a vital role in determining how reality behaves. In the famous double-slit experiment, a single particle fired toward a barrier with two slits creates a wave-like interference pattern until it is observed. When measurement is introduced, the particle behaves like a solid object instead, collapsing into a defined position. Observation changes outcome. That discovery shattered the notion of an objective, observer-independent universe. And it opened the door to a revolutionary question. If mere observation can alter quantum events, what effect does conscious intention have? Researchers began to test this. Experiments in mind-matter interaction, once considered fringe, have now shown that focused thought may affect the behavior of physical systems. Whether through subtle changes in random number generators, light interference patterns, or biological responses, Data is accumulating that suggests the mind is not a passive bystander. It's a participant. But participation is not the same as control. And that's where many people misunderstand this principle. Influencing reality with your mind is not about forcing outcomes or manifesting material goods on command. It's about aligning your consciousness with deeper patterns. Patterns that are already woven into the universe and awaiting your resonance. The Urantia Book frames this idea through the lens of spiritual cooperation. It teaches that human beings are not solitary agents bouncing around a neutral cosmos. We are participants in a purpose-driven system, designed by a divine intelligence, and guided by an indwelling presence known as the thought adjuster. This fragment of God lives within each person, constantly working to align our mind and will with higher truth. Influencing reality, then, isn't about egoic control. It's about attunement. You influence reality to the extent that you are aligned with truth, motivated by goodness, and fueled by sincere intention. The greater your alignment, the more precisely your inner world begins to synchronize with the structures of outer reality. That principle echoes the findings of quantum coherence. When systems become coherent, they behave in harmony as a unified field. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions become coherent, when they reinforce each other instead of pulling in opposite directions, your capacity to influence outcomes increases. Not by magic, by physics. Intention is a frequency. Emotion is a frequency. Thought is a pattern. When you introduce consistent, high-quality patterns into your field, through focused visualization, deep prayer, or intentional silence, you begin to shift the probabilities around you. You don't override natural laws. You participate in them consciously. The Urantia Book emphasizes faith as a mechanism for this kind of alignment. But it's careful to distinguish between true spiritual faith and selfish desire. Faith, in this context, is not about demanding outcomes. It's about trusting the process, surrendering to divine guidance, and acting with moral clarity. Your thought adjuster does not respond to whims. It responds to intentions rooted in eternal values. This is a critical distinction. The goal is not to manifest according to personal gain. The goal is to evolve, to become more integrated with the higher reality that already exists beyond the limits of ego. Still, within that framework, your power is enormous. You have the ability to change not only how you perceive the world, but how the world interacts with you. Not because you're bending reality to your will, but because you're learning to resonate with the deeper fabric of existence. This resonance shows up in many ways. It shows up when synchronicities increase, appear at exactly the right time. It shows up when challenges suddenly feel less chaotic because you are not reacting blindly, you are perceiving from a higher standpoint. It shows up when your inner peace begins to reflect outward, reshaping your relationships, your opportunities, your sense of direction. In both quantum theory and Urantia cosmology, the field responds to the observer, but only when the observer is consciously present. This presence is cultivated through practice. Visualization is one method, not fantasizing but holding a clear, emotionally grounded image of what aligns with your soul. In quantum language, this means collapsing probabilities into patterns that match your intent. In spiritual terms, it means stepping into agreement with the divine path already seated in your being. Another method is intentional stillness, quieting the noise of the reactive mind so that deeper insights can arise. This is where the thought adjuster speaks most clearly, not in noise but in subtlety, not through command but through resonance. The Urantia Book describes this process as soul fusion, a gradual union between your conscious personality and the indwelling divine fragment. As this fusion progresses, your ability to influence reality increases, not because your ego gets stronger, but because your essence becomes clearer. This is the paradox. Your true power is revealed not when you try to dominate life, but when you harmonize with it. That's when outcomes change. That's when resistance fades. That's when the external world begins to mirror your internal alignment. There are limits, of course. You cannot override the free will of others. You cannot avoid every trial or consequence. But you can transform how you experience reality. And in doing so, you subtly shift the probabilities that determine what happens next. Quantum theory calls it observer influence. The Urantia Book calls it willful cooperation with divine law. You don't manifest because you're entitled. You influence because you're aligned. And alignment is not a gift. It's a practice. So can you really influence reality with your mind? Yes, when that mind is focused, coherent, and harmonized with deeper values. Yes, when you stop trying to manipulate the universe and begin listening to its structure. Yes, when you understand that power is not about control but about clarity. Your mind is not just thinking thoughts. It is interacting with a responsive field of potential. Every act of focused intention shapes that field. Every moment of love, integrity, and faith creates a new pattern in the matrix of possibility. You are not powerless. You are not waiting for miracles. You are a living participant in the most intricate and intelligent reality ever conceived. And when your inner world changes, your outer world doesn't just respond. Transforms. You move through life thinking, choosing, reacting, feeling. And yet, somewhere beneath all of it, there's something else. Something quieter, deeper, and far more consistent. That inner nudge. The whisper that urges you to pause or to reach out or to walk away. Sometimes it comes as clarity, sometimes as unease, but it's always there, just beyond the noise. Is that your subconscious, intuition, an evolved instinct, or is it something far more intelligent? Modern science has begun to explore the possibility of awareness. Experiments involving intuition, remote viewing, and spontaneous insight suggest that information may be accessed from beyond the personal memory bank. People report knowing things they were never taught, feeling connected to others across space, and receiving flashes of knowledge that seem to arrive from nowhere. Quantum theory doesn't explain this fully, but it does open the door. Non-locality, a core principle in quantum physics, allows two entangled particles to affect each other instantly without traveling through space. This phenomenon has no classical explanation, but it's verified repeatedly in labs. If particles can be connected across distance, what does that imply about consciousness? It suggests that the mind might be tapping into something beyond itself, accessing a layer of reality where separation doesn't exist. The Urantia Book goes further. It claims that every human being is guided, moment by moment, by an actual fragment of God, referred to as the thought adjuster. This is not a metaphor. It is described as a real, pre-personal entity, indwelling your mind and constantly working to elevate your thoughts, refine your choices, and awaken your soul to its highest potential. This thought adjuster does not control you. It does not interfere with your free will, but it does illuminate your path, subtly, patiently, and with absolute loyalty. It is the reason you've survived more than you understand. It's the cause behind the idea you didn't plan, the insight that seemed to arrive fully formed, the sense of direction that made no logical sense but led to your greatest growth. And this presence is not temporary. It is eternal. From the moment your moral consciousness awakened as a child, your thought adjuster began its work. Its purpose is to help you grow into the full realization of who you are, not as a personality defined by culture, but as a soul designed for eternity. Science can't locate this guide, can't dissect it or verify it with instruments, but it can acknowledge that something unusual is happening in the mind. Studies on intuition reveal decision-making abilities that precede conscious thought. Heart rate and brainwave patterns often shift before a stimulus occurs, as if the body is anticipating reality. This suggests that part of you already knows what's coming. That part is not reactionary. It's predictive, connected, beyond time. The Urantia Book says the thought adjuster operates outside of time and space. It is fully integrated with universal intelligence, acting as your personal link to the infinite. It guides not through command, but through influence, not through voices or visions, but through inner clarity. But guidance only works if you're willing to listen. And listening requires a kind of mental silence that modern life almost never offers. Your thought adjuster speaks clearest when your mind is not racing, your emotions are not reactive, and your intentions are sincere. This is why practices like meditation, reflection, or intentional stillness are so They're not sage contact. When the inner chatter fades, the subtle promptings become more noticeable. You begin to distinguish between conditioned thought and divine suggestion. Over time, you start to see the difference between what is clever and what is true. And what is true is always simple, but never small. Your guide won't flatter your ego. It won't reinforce your fears. It won't tell you what you want to hear. It will call you higher, often in ways that feel challenging or unclear. But it will never abandon you. It is incapable of betrayal. In the Urantia model, the thought adjuster is your closest companion, more intimate with your soul than you are. It knows your potential. It sees your entire journey, from the beginning of time to the threshold of divinity. And it is actively shaping your destiny, not by forcing outcomes, but by gently steering your decisions toward truth, love, and growth. This guidance shows up in synchronistic moments, in chance encounters that alter your direction, in dreams that leave a residue of insight, in persistent ideas that won't let go. It is never random. It is precise. Quantum theory allows for systems to exist in states of entanglement, where one element state depends on another, regardless of distance. In a metaphorical sense, you are entangled with your divine origin. You carry within you a piece of eternity, and that piece is still in contact with its source. So who or what is guiding you? Not a guardian angel watching from afar, not a celestial committee weighing your actions, but a living presence inside you, working without rest to bring your finite self into alignment with infinite reality. This guidance is not reserved for saints or mystics. It's available to everyone, but it activates more fully when you choose to cooperate. When you ask not just for answers, but for alignment. When you seek not just comfort, but transformation. The more you trust it, the more it reveals. You were not born alone. You are not navigating life alone. And you will not leave this world alone. You are guided quietly, lovingly, wisely, by a force that knows your soul better than your mind ever will. Listen for it. Honor it. And when you feel that whisper, that persistent knowing, that voice with no sound, follow it, because that is not your imagination. That is your divine compass. You make choices every day. Some feel automatic: what to eat, when to sleep, what to say. Others feel deeply significant: who to love, what to believe, what to become. But in the quiet space between thought and action, the question lingers. Are you actually choosing? Or are your decisions the result of programming, past conditioning, biology, or fate? This question strikes at the heart of human identity. Because if free will is real, you are a creator. But if it's an illusion, you are simply a product, a character in a script you didn't write. Quantum physics offers an unexpected entry into this debate. At the subatomic level, behavior becomes unpredictable. The outcome of a quantum event can't be precisely determined. Only probabilities can be calculated. This isn't due to technological limitations. It's built into the structure of the universe. Nature, at its core, is probabilistic, not deterministic. That uncertainty creates space. It suggests that not all outcomes are inevitable, that something has the ability to influence which possibility becomes actual, and that something could be consciousness. Free will, in this framework, becomes a quantum function. The conscious agent collapses the wave of potential into a defined reality through observation, intention, and action. The Urantia Book takes this further. It places free will at the absolute center of cosmic meaning. In its teachings, free will is not a byproduct of evolution. It is a sacred gift, bestowed by the Universal Father, precisely to allow you to grow, evolve, and co-create your eternal identity. You are not designed to be perfect. You are designed to choose perfection. That distinction matters. According to the Urantia Book, the entire evolutionary journey of the soul depends on the use of free will. Every time you choose truth over distortion, love over fear, service over self-absorption, you advance. Not in some symbolic way, but literally. Your soul expands. Your thought adjuster fuses more closely with your personality. You shift into higher states of being. But none of this is guaranteed. You can choose to resist growth. You can choose selfishness, pride, stagnation. The universe will not force your evolution, because coercion destroys personality. And the goal is not obedience, it's maturity. This is why free will is the key to everything. Without it, there is no real transformation. No soul. No authenticity. Quantum theory supports this model in surprising ways. The act of measurement, of choosing how to observe, determines what is real. That choice isn't random. It's personal. It's participatory, just like your daily choices. When you choose consciously, you interact with the structure of the universe itself. You select from a field of probabilities the version of reality that matches your intention. And here's the deeper truth. You're always choosing, even when you think you're not. Indecision is a choice. Avoidance is a choice. Repetition is a choice. The real question is not whether you're choosing. It's how aware you are of your choosing. The Urantia Book describes human life as a moral and spiritual proving ground, a realm in which free will creatures develop character through lived experience. Earth is not just a random planet. It is a designed environment for decision-making. And every decision has eternal implications, not because you're being judged, but because you are literally forming the soul you will carry beyond this world. That soul is shaped by pattern, and patterns emerge through repeated choices. If you repeatedly choose kindness, your soul reflects that pattern. If you choose resentment, the pattern takes a different shape. And those patterns are not cosmetic. They determine the capacity of your consciousness to receive more truth, more love, more divine contact. This is where freedom becomes responsibility. You are not being punished for your mistakes. You are simply living out the pattern your choices have formed. But the good news is this: you can change the pattern. Every moment is a reset. The next thought, the next word, the next response. Each is a new interaction with reality. And each has the power to shift your trajectory, not just in this life, but in all that follows. Quantum freedom is not absolute chaos. It is structured openness. Boundaries exist, but within those boundaries, infinite variation is possible. Likewise, the Urantia cosmos is orderly. There are laws, patterns, hierarchies. But within that structure, each soul writes its own path, guided by the thought adjuster, supported by celestial intelligences, but never controlled. Even God does not override your free will. This is one of the most striking statements in the Urantia Book. The Universal Father respects your freedom so completely that he allows you to reject him forever, if you so choose. That's not weakness. That's love. True love always includes freedom, and true freedom always includes consequence. So is free will an illusion? Universe between mind and reality, between finite and infinite. It is the spark that transforms potential into actuality. But it's also fragile. When you give your will to unconscious habits, media programming, external authority, or fear, you surrender your most sacred power. You become reactive, predictable, dimmed. But when you reclaim your will, when you begin to act from presence, clarity, and spiritual alignment, you step into your true role as a co-creator of your life and your destiny. That's not a motivational idea. It's a metaphysical reality. Quantum physics affirms your influence. The Urantia Book affirms your purpose. Both reveal a universe that is responsive, participatory, and intelligently designed for growth. So the next time you're tempted to say, "That's just how I am," or "It doesn't matter," or "What choice do I have?" remember this: you always have a choice, and that choice is the axis upon which reality turns. Look around. What do you see? A world rich with beauty, yes, but also chaos, confusion, and contradiction. A species capable of transcendent love and of unspeakable cruelty. A civilization filled with advanced technology, and yet still grappling with its own inner darkness. It's easy to dismiss this planet as flawed, primitive, or broken. But what if that contrast, that tension, isn't a sign of failure, but the exact environment required for profound growth? The Urantia Book presents Earth, referred to as Urantia, not as an ordinary world, but as one of the most unique and challenging evolutionary spheres in the entire local universe. According to its narrative, our planet is what's known as a decimal world, a life experiment planet, where new methods of biological and spiritual development are tested under the guidance of celestial beings. Only 1 in every 10 inhabited worlds has this designation. That status alone makes Earth special. But there's more. The Urantia Book reveals that Earth's planetary history is marked by multiple disruptions to the divine plan, rebellions, defaulted missions, and spiritual isolation. These events created delays and distortions in our evolutionary path. And yet, despite these setbacks, or perhaps because of them, Urantia has become a crucible of rapid soul development. Contrast accelerates growth. Pain sharpens insight. Tension ignites transformation. Earth is hard by design, and that design may reveal its purpose, not as a punishment ground, but as a cosmic classroom for developing powerful, spiritually resilient souls. Quantum physics offers a parallel metaphor. In the quantum realm, particles learn to behave through interaction. Systems evolve not in isolation, but through stress, feedback, and entanglement. The observer doesn't just watch. The observer participates. The learning emerges through relationship. In the same way, human consciousness does not evolve in a vacuum. It develops through contrast, conflict, and connection. Your soul grows not just through meditation, but through heartbreak, contradiction, and the thousands of decisions made when no one is watching. The Urantia perspective deepens this view by emphasizing Earth's unique function as a training ground for personalities destined for eternal progression. Every inhabited world contributes to soul development, but few worlds offer as intense a curriculum as this one. That's not spiritual marketing. It's metaphysical architecture. And Earth's significance reaches even further. According to the Urantia Book, this planet was chosen as the stage for the final bestowal of Michael of Nebadon, known to us as Jesus of Nazareth. Of the millions of worlds he could have chosen for his human experience, he chose this one. That decision alone marks Earth as spiritually strategic. His life here was not simply redemptive, it was revelatory. It demonstrated how divine presence operates in a world of density, division, and spiritual confusion. That same confusion is still present. But so is the opportunity. The soul is not fragile. It is durable, adaptable, capable of absorbing. All is ideal for this development. Every injustice invites you to choose compassion. Every lie invites you to seek truth. Every hardship presents a chance to cultivate inner stillness in the face of external storms. And each of these choices strengthens the soul. Now consider what quantum physics says about potential. Reality is not fixed. It unfolds according to probabilistic rules. Particles don't move in straight lines. They hover in possibility until an observer collapses them into an outcome. This principle doesn't just govern subatomic particles. It hints at how consciousness itself navigates experience. You are constantly choosing how to interpret events. You're deciding what story to tell. And through that story, you're selecting what version of reality becomes real to you. That isn't abstraction. It's participation. In this classroom called Earth, the test isn't how much you know. It's how much you become. The Urantia Book outlines a progression model in which souls ascend through higher and higher worlds, each more refined than the last. But Earth is where that journey begins. Here, in this dense, volatile realm, you forge the identity that will carry you through eternity. And how do you forge it? Through the use of free will, through conscious relationship with your thought adjuster, through a growing awareness of your purpose, not just as a body in time, but as a soul in development. The challenges are not random. They are opportunities encoded into the curriculum of time-space evolution. You are here to learn empathy not just by reading about it, but by being broken and rebuilt. You are here to learn strength, not by avoiding difficulty, but by confronting it with faith. You are here to learn discernment, not by memorizing doctrine, but by aligning your life with the values of truth, beauty, and goodness. That's not a punishment. That's empowerment. From the quantum view, Earth is a probability generator, a field of infinite potential filtered through awareness. From the Urantia perspective, Earth is a personality laboratory, a realm designed to awaken the divine within the human. The only limitation is unconsciousness. When you forget that this world is a classroom, you become bitter. You resist the lessons. You replay pain instead of transforming it. But when you remember, when you understand that nothing is wasted, and that every moment contains sacred instruction, you begin differently. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" You start asking, "What is this showing me about myself?" The Urantia Book calls this the ascending career. It begins here on Earth with moral choice and soul awareness. But it doesn't end with death. It continues through morontia spheres, spiritual realms, and eventually the paradise presence of the Universal Father. Each level brings more light, more clarity, more capacity to love. But Earth remains the foundation. How you respond here, how you think, act, forgive, love, create, and persevere, forms the base from which all higher growth unfolds. You are not here by accident. You are not here just to survive. You are here to learn how to live as a soul, in the midst of a world that challenges you to forget that you are one. So yes, Earth is the cosmic classroom, and whether you pass the test isn't about scoring high. It's about remembering who you are, choosing who you want to become, and aligning your life with the curriculum of truth written into the very structure of the universe. Your next lesson is now. For centuries, science and spirituality have been treated like rivals in an intellectual battlefield. One claimed the authority of reason, experimentation, and evidence. The other claimed the authority of revelation, faith, and inner knowing. Each side built towering systems of thought, rarely speaking the same language, often suspicious of the other's motives. But something has begun to shift, not through compromise but through convergence. As science pushes deeper into the quantum world, and as spirituality matures beyond superstition into experiential wisdom, a new space is opening, one where the insights of both disciplines are beginning to resonate. Consider this: quantum physics has shown that particles don't have fixed properties until they are observed. That space is not empty. That time is relative. That the universe operates as a field of interdependent potential rather than a machine of separate parts. These are not just abstract concepts. They overturn the foundations of materialist thinking. Now look at the spiritual teachings found in the Urantia Book. It describes the universe not as a dead mechanism, but as a living, intelligent organism, structured, purposeful, and fundamentally personal. It claims that consciousness is not an accident, but an expression of the Universal Father. That every individual is indwelt by a divine presence. That spiritual energy, mind energy, and physical energy interact through laws of intention, value, and alignment. Sound familiar? Both systems, quantum science and Urantia cosmology, point toward a conscious universe. Science doesn't yet use spiritual language. It speaks in equations, particles, and probabilities. But the patterns it discovers increasingly echo ancient metaphysical truths. And spirituality, when stripped of dogma, reveals deep structures of meaning that often parallel what science is only now beginning to articulate. Here's where the fusion becomes undeniable. Quantum entanglement shows that two particles can become linked in such a way that a change in one is reflected instantly in the other, regardless of distance. This suggests a level of unity that defies classical logic. The Urantia Book teaches that all beings are interconnected through spiritual circuits, mind gravity, and personality unification. It asserts that nothing is truly separate, not in thought, not in soul, not in destiny. The observer effect in physics demonstrates that the act of observation influences outcomes. This points to the idea that consciousness is not a passive recorder but an active participant. The Urantia Book teaches that conscious beings, through faith, intention, and love, shape their soul's evolution and, in doing so, influence the universe itself. The finite is not incidental. It is essential to the unfolding of divine purpose. In both models, your awareness matters. It's not incidental to the system. It is integral. So the ancient question returns in modern form. Is there a boundary between what can be known and what can only be experienced? The answer is beginning to change. We are starting to see that true knowledge includes both objective understanding and subjective realization. That to measure a thing and to know it in the heart are not opposites. They are different modes of comprehension. This is more than intellectual. It has implications for how we live. In medicine, we are beginning to understand that belief, mindset, and emotional coherence affect healing. The placebo effect, long considered a nuisance in clinical trials, is now being studied as a mechanism of mind-body interaction. The power of intention is no longer mystical. It's biological. The Urantia Book would say, of course, the mind is the arena of choice. The body responds to the soul's direction. When spirit, mind, and matter align, the result is coherence, wholeness, health. In education, we are learning that emotional safety, purpose, and engagement radically impact learning outcomes. Intelligence isn't just IQ. It's relational. It's moral. It's connected to a child's sense of meaning. Urantia teachings place enormous value on personality integration, bringing head, heart, and will into harmony. That's not philosophy. That's development. In global systems, we're beginning to question materialist success metrics, GDP, efficiency, conquest, and seek metrics of well-being, sustainability, and cooperation. Spiritual frameworks have always emphasized those values, not as luxury ideals, but as the natural consequence of spiritual maturity. And in personal growth, the shift is profound. People are turning inward, not to escape the world, but to understand their place within it. Meditation, breathwork, intuitive development, and energy awareness are no longer fringe, they are mainstream. Quantum theory supports the idea that the inner world affects the outer. Urantia affirms that the spiritual inner life is the foundation of personal evolution. The walls between science and spirituality are not being torn down. They are being transcended, because in truth they were never opposed. They were always lenses, focusing on different aspects of the same reality. Science asks, how does it work? Spirituality asks, why does it matter? Together, they provide a more complete picture. A living, evolving cosmos, in which each soul is both a mystery and a revelation. And here's the most empowering part. You no longer have to choose between logic and faith, reason and intuition, brain and heart. You are built to use both. Your consciousness is wide enough to hold paradox. You can study quantum theory in the morning and pray in the evening, and both acts bring you closer to truth. The Urantia Book calls this the unity of science, philosophy, and religion. Not a forced merger, but a natural synthesis, where facts, meaning, and value cooperate to produce wisdom. That wisdom is what the world needs now. Because when science is divorced from meaning, it creates tools without ethics. And when spirituality is divorced from reason, it becomes superstition without substance. But when the two converge, when observation meets intention, when logic meets love, when curiosity meets humility, something powerful emerges. Clarity, courage, purpose. The veil between disciplines is lifting, not because one is winning over the other, but because both are revealing the same deeper truth. We live in an intelligent universe. It is not random. It is not cruel. It is structured to support growth, guided by love, and activated by choice. And the mind that sees this not just intellectually but personally is standing at the doorway between science and spirit, ready to step through. You carry a name, a story, a history. You have preferences, fears, talents, wounds. People know you through your roles: student, teacher, artist, parent, seeker, skeptic. You know yourself through memory and sensation. But beneath all of that, deeper than thoughts, older than biology, there is something else. And it has no name. The Urantia Book calls it your personality, a unique, unrepeatable identity granted by the Universal Father, designed to persist beyond space and time. Not a mask, not a product of culture, but the essential you that exists before the brain begins to think, and after the body falls away. Quantum theory doesn't describe the soul, but it does describe non-local phenomena, fields that are not bound to any specific place, particles that do not exist until observed, energy that behaves as both potential and manifestation. These properties mirror what many spiritual traditions have said for centuries, that reality is layered, fluid, and infused with awareness. And you are not an observer looking in. You are part of that field. You are not separate from the dance of creation, you are embedded within it. This is not a philosophical idea. It's a shift in perception. You've been trained to think of yourself as a self-contained unit, an organism with a beginning and end, making choices on a stage it did not build. But when you begin to see yourself as a multidimensional being, when you understand that your essence is interacting with time, space, mind, and spirit all at once, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop trying to become someone. You start remembering who you already are. The Urantia Book says you are a soul in formation, a personality conjoined with mind and indwelt by a fragment of divinity, the thought adjuster. This adjuster is not symbolic. It is your most real identity. Your physical life is temporary. Your mental framework is temporary. But the adjuster is eternal. It does not learn. It knows. It waits patiently for your willingness to cooperate with its quiet influence. The more you align with it, through sincerity, trust, and moral choice, the more your soul becomes a true reflection of your highest identity. Not just a better version of yourself. A new order of being. Quantum science, in its own way, acknowledges this possibility. It proposes that consciousness may be the fundamental field, the base layer from which all else emerges. If that's true, then your consciousness is not a side effect of neurons. It is part of the source code. But here's the paradox. Your highest identity doesn't arrive through control or accumulation. It emerges through surrender, not to weakness, but to truth. Not to fantasy, but to the deeper pattern running through all life. The Urantia Book makes this plain. Your purpose is not to conquer the world. It is to become whole, to achieve personality unification through the progressive integration of body, mind, and spirit. This is not done through belief alone. It is done through experience. Each decision to love instead of judge, to create instead of consume, to speak truth instead of silence, brings you closer to your true self. And your true self is not something you invent. It's something you recognize. That recognition grows as you deepen your awareness of your spiritual identity. The Urantia Book teaches that the fusion of your personality with your thought adjuster is the culmination of your mortal journey, the moment when you become truly and forever real. Until then, you are evolving, shaping your soul through 1,000 tiny choices, moving ever closer to the divine presence within you. That's the cosmic irony. The greatest mystery in the universe is not out there. It's you. The consciousness that observes the stars is made of the same spiritual substance that guides their formation. The awareness that asks, "Who am I?" is the very thread that connects you to the source of all being. So, who are you really? You are not your traumas. You are not your triumphs. You are not your opinions, your fears, or your titles. You are the one who chooses. You are the one who observes. You are the one who awakens. An awakening isn't an escape from reality. It's a deeper participation in it. You don't leave the world behind. You see it more clearly. You see yourself more clearly. And in that clarity, the illusion of separateness begins to dissolve. This is the union of science and spirituality. Science shows you the outer structure of reality. Spirituality reveals your inner place within it. The Urantia Book weaves both together into a vision of personal destiny so profound that it demands everything, but offers more in return. Not just understanding, not just progress, but transformation. From a biological creature to a cosmic personality. From a reactive mind to a co-creative consciousness. From a seeker to a son or daughter of God. Aware, aligned, and alive in ways no science or scripture can fully describe. And that journey doesn't end with death. It continues through morontia realms, spiritual spheres, and eventually, through millennia of soul development. It leads you to paradise, where you stand in the direct presence of the source of all. But that future starts now. With one choice, one shift, one remembrance. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not random. You are a part of the universal pattern, encoded with purpose, guided by spirit, and capable of realities far beyond your current perception. So if you want to know who you really are, stop looking for something new. Start listening for what has always been calling you from within. You are not just a spark of the divine. You are the flame learning how to recognize its own light.